The Galactic Assembly was the oldest institution in known space. For 12,000 years, it had stood as the place where species came to talk instead of fight. 400 different races sent their representatives to Station Prime, a massive structure floating in neutral space, built from crystal and metal that gleamed like a frozen star. Humanity had been part of this assembly for only 60 years. In galactic terms, they were bobbies. Most species had been members for thousands of years. Some remembered a time before faster-than-light travel. Humans were newcomers, and many older species looked at them the way adults look at noisy children. Ambassador Park led the human delegation. She was 53 years old, with silver streaks running through her black hair. She had spent 30 years in diplomatic service, first on Earth, then among the stars. She knew how to read a room. She knew when people were lying. And today, as she walked into the great hall of the assembly, she knew something was very wrong. The hall was circular, with seats rising in tiers like a stadium. Each species had its own section. Some delegates were tall and thin, others short and wide. Some had fur, some had scales, some had skin that changed color with their moods. The air was filled with 1,000 different translation signals, turning alien languages into words each species could understand. Took her seat. Beside her sat Admiral, a military man with a stern face and watchful eyes. On her other side was Lee, a young woman who served as their chief analyst, was already frowning at her data pad. Something is happening, whispered. They have called an emergency session. They never do that. They were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They were tall beings with skin and 4 arms. Their empire controlled hundreds of star systems. They had been watching humanity's expansion with cold eyes for decades. The session began. High Speaker, the leader, rose from his seat. His voice was deep and carried across the hall without effort. Fellow members of the assembly, he said, I bring grave news. We have discovered that the human species has been developing forbidden technology in secret. They are building cascade weapons. A gasp went through the hall. Cascade weapons were the most dangerous things in the galaxy. They could make stars explode. They could destroy entire solar systems. Building them was the worst crime any species could commit. Stood immediately. That is a lie. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We have evidence. He waved one of his four hands, and holographic images appeared in the center of the hall. Research documents, communication records, technical drawings. These were obtained from human research stations. Continued. As you can see, the humans have been working on this technology for at least 10 years. His heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. Those documents are fake. We have never researched such weapons. We demand an independent investigation. The evidence speaks for itself, replied. I call for an immediate vote. The human species must be stripped of its assembly seat. Their worlds must be placed under protective quarantine until we can be sure they are no longer a threat. Species after species rose to speak in favor of the motion. Some were old allies of the, others owed them debts. Others were simply afraid. The controlled much of galactic trade. Going against them was dangerous. And tried to speak again. I request a 30-day investigation period. Said the assembly speaker, a being made of living crystal. I request to present counter-evidence. I request private arbitration under Section 47 of the Assembly Charter. The vote was called. 322 species voted yes. 61 voted no. 17 abstained. Silence fell over the hall. Everyone looked at the human delegation. They expected tears. They expected anger. They expected begging. Removed her translation earpiece. She turned to Admiral and spoke in Korean, knowing that without the earpiece the assembly could not understand. They have already decided. This was never a trial. This was an execution. Nodded slowly. What do we do? Thought of Earth. She thought of the 12 colony worlds filled with human families. She thought of the children who had been born under alien stars, who had never known war. She put her earpiece back in and stood tall. "Oh, the human delegation has heard your decision," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We reject it. We reject your false evidence. We reject your corrupt process. And we reject this assembly that has forgotten its purpose." Laughed. "You reject. You have no power to reject anything." Looked directly at him. "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Assembly, effective immediately. We will not recognize any authority you claim over our worlds. We will not accept any blockade. We will not bow." The hall erupted in chaos. Species shouted at each other. Some called for arrest. Others demanded calm. Through it all, the human delegation walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed on the crystal floor. Admiral walked beside. His voice was low. "Ambassador, do you understand what you have just done? They will send warships. They will try to starve us out." Did not look back at the screaming assembly. "I know. We are not ready for war. Then we will get ready." She pushed open the great doors. "I have given us a fighting chance. That is all I can do. The rest is up to our people." Behind them, the galaxy watched in shock as the youngest species walked away from everything they had worked to build. The war had not yet begun, but everyone knew it was coming. The 3 months passed after humanity walked out of the assembly. 90 days of silence. 90 days of darkness. The moved fast. Within a week of the walkout, they had assembled a quarantine fleet. 200 warships formed a ring around human space. Nothing was allowed in. Nothing was allowed out. Admiral, a decorated commander, led the blockade from his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. "They will surrender within 60 days, told his officers. "Humans are soft. They need trade. They need resources. When their children start going hungry, they will come crawling back." He was wrong. Inside the blockade, something was happening that the galaxy did not expect. Humanity was not falling apart. Humanity was coming together. On Mars, Captain Bay stood at the observation deck of the orbital shipyards. He was 31 years old, a naval officer who had spent his career running patrol missions and escort duties. He had never seen real combat. Now, he watched as civilian cargo ships were stripped down and rebuilt into something new. "We are turning freighters into warships," he said to the woman beside him. "This is madness." The woman was Bay, his grandmother. She was 78 years old, with white hair and hands that had built starship engines for 50 years before her retirement. Now she was back, working 18-hour days in the shipyards. "Madness is waiting to die," replied. She pointed at a ship being fitted with weapons. "That freighter used to carry grain. Now it will carry our hope. Every ship matters. Every person matters. This is how we survive." Looked at his grandmother with new respect. He had grown up hearing stories about Earth's history, about wars fought with less technology than they had now. He had always thought those stories were from a different time. Now he understood. The spirit that had carried humanity through those dark ages was still alive. Across human space, the same scene played out again and again. Factories that made consumer goods now made weapons. Scientists who studied stars now studied shields. Teachers taught their students how to ration food. Doctors prepared for casualties that had not yet happened. On Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the old city of Seoul, Doctor worked in military intelligence. She was 40 years old, who had spent her career studying alien languages and cultures. She had believed in peace. She had believed that understanding could solve any problem. Now she sat in front of screens filled with intercepted communications. Her team had cracked their codes 2 weeks ago. What she found made her stomach turn. "They planned this for years," she told Admiral during a secure briefing. "The fake evidence, the emergency vote, everything. It was never about cascade weapons. It is about resources." Leaned forward. "Explain." pulled up a star map. Human space sits on top of the largest deposits of quantum crystals in the known galaxy. These crystals are needed for advanced faster-than-light engines. They are running out. They need hours. So they invented a crime to justify taking our worlds. Yes, and this is not the first time. I found records from the archives. They did the same thing to them 600 years ago, and to the before that. They find a young species, accuse them of something terrible, and take what they want while the galaxy watches and does nothing. Was silent for a long moment. Then he stood. Send everything to Ambassador. She needs this for her work. Ambassador was not sitting idle. While the military prepared for war, she was fighting a different battle. Using secret communication channels, she reached out to species who had shown doubt during the vote. A species of aquatic beings who lived on ocean worlds sent a hidden message. We believe you. We cannot help openly, but we believe you. The ancient beings who rarely spoke to anyone sent something more valuable. A single encrypted file with one message attached. We remember when they did this to us. Here is the truth they buried. The file contained records of 12 species that they had destroyed or conquered using the same methods. False accusations, rigged votes, military blockades. The pattern was clear. Shared this information with her inner circle. We cannot broadcast this yet. If we do it too soon, they will jam the signals and call it human propaganda. We need to wait for the right moment. When will that be? Asked Lee. When we prove we are not victims. When we prove we can fight back. On the 91st day of the blockade, Admiral gave a speech that was broadcast to every human world. He stood in the command center of the newly formed United Earth Defense Fleet. Behind him, holographic displays showed the ships they had built in secret. They expect us to wither, said. They expect us to beg. They have not studied our history. They do not know who we are. We are the species that crossed oceans in wooden boats. We are the species that walked on our moon with computers weaker than a child's toy. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars, and we are still here. He paused, letting his words sink in. Tomorrow, we break the blockade. Tomorrow, we remind the galaxy that humanity does not surrender. Across human space, people watched the broadcast in homes and shelters and ships. They were tired. They were hungry. They were afraid. But they were also so ready. The quarantine fleet detected the movement too late. Admiral was drinking tea in his private quarters when the alarm sounded. He walked calmly to the bridge, expecting another false reading. His sensors had been picking up strange signals for weeks, but every time they investigated, they found nothing. He assumed it was human desperation, small ships trying to run the blockade for supplies. He was wrong. Admiral, his sensor officer said, voice shaking. We are detecting 200 human warships emerging from the asteroid field in Sector 7. Dropped his tea. The cup shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. That is impossible. They had no fleet. We watched them. We monitored everything. They built them in the asteroids, sir. Hidden facilities. They have been working for 3 months in complete darkness. Stared at the tactical display. The human ships were unlike anything he had seen. They were smaller than vessels, more compact. They moved fast, changing direction with a speed that should have been impossible for ships of their size. All ships to battle stations, ordered. Form defensive line. We outnumber them. We will crush them. But even as he gave the orders, doubt crept into his mind. Something about those ships was different. Something was wrong. Captain Bay sat in the command chair of the destroyer Indomitable. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. Around him, his crew worked with focus and precision. Most of them had never seen combat. Neither had he. But they had trained for this moment. They had pushed themselves beyond what they thought possible. All ships, came Admiral's voice over the fleet channel, begin attack run on Sector 7 defensive line. Remember your training. rotate on damage. Never stop moving. We are predators. They are prey. Understood the strategy. Humans had evolved as persistent hunters on Earth. Their ancestors had chased animals for hours, even days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That same instinct was built into their fleet tactics. They would not win through single powerful strikes. They would win by never stopping. Forward thrusters at maximum, ordered. Weapons free. Pick your targets and keep pressing. The Indomitable surged forward. Around it, 199 other human ships did the same. They opened fire first. Their weapons were powerful, designed to destroy ships with single hits. But the human ships were already scattering, moving in patterns that were hard to predict. The first volley missed almost entirely. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons were smaller, less powerful individually, but they fired constantly, a steady rain of destruction that found gaps in shields. One ship took damage, then another, then another. They are not stopping, an officer shouted. They should be retreating to regroup. Why are they not retreating? Admiral watched in horror as his defensive line began to crack. When a human ship took damage, it did not run. Instead, it fell back slightly, letting fresh ships take the lead. The damaged ships repaired what they could and returned to the fight. It was like fighting water. Every time he pushed, they flowed around him. Send a surrender demand, ordered. Tell them to stop or we will destroy them all. The communication was sent. The human response came back immediately. One word, no. Heard the demand over his radio. He smiled grimly. His grandmother had told him about the old Korean word for this kind of stubborn resistance. She had taught him that there were some things worth fighting for, even when the odds were bad. All ships, Admiral broadcast. They want us to surrender. What do we say? 200 ships answered as one. No. The battle continued for 14 hours. They tried everything. They tried concentrated attacks. They tried spreading their forces. They tried retreating to regroup. Nothing worked. The humans just kept coming. The ship took a direct hit that destroyed the rear shield generator. 3 crew members were injured. He ordered damage control teams to work while the ship continued fighting. There was no time to stop. There was no option to stop. By the 10th hour, the line had holes in it. By the 12th hour, those holes were wide enough for ships to pass through. By the 14th hour, Admiral watched his fleet break apart and scatter into the darkness of space. He had lost. As human ships poured through the gap in the blockade, Doctor began her part of the mission. She had been waiting on a communications ship just behind the front lines. Now she broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. This message is for all species of the Galactic Assembly. What you were told about humanity was a lie. We have proof. The broadcast included everything. The plans, the fake evidence, the intercepted communications, the archives showing the same pattern used against other species. Doctor spoke calmly, letting the evidence speak for itself. We did not build cascade weapons. We built hope. And today we proved that hope is stronger than lies. Across the galaxy, species listened. On Station Prime, the ambassador watched the broadcast with tears in his large, dark eyes. The assembly speaker stood frozen, its crystal body flickering with confused light. Admiral sent one final message to the assembly. As his fleet reformed beyond the broken blockade, we are not coming to beg. We are coming to be heard, and you will listen. The galaxy had watched humanity march out of the assembly in disgrace. Now they watched humanity march back in victory. And this time, everyone was paying attention. The human fleet did not stop after breaking the blockade. It kept moving forward, toward Station Prime itself. This had never happened before. In 12,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever threatened the assembly directly. Station Prime was supposed to be neutral ground. It was supposed to be safe. Now, 187 human warships were heading straight for it. The galactic assembly fell into chaos. Emergency sessions were called every hour. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries suddenly found themselves in desperate conversations. They demanded a united military response. High Speaker stood before the assembly, his face tight with anger. They are coming to destroy us, he declared. All species must send their fleets. We must stop them before they reach this station. But the other species hesitated. They had watched the Battle of Sector 7. They had seen what the humans could do. They had outnumbered the human fleet and they had lost. What chance did anyone else have? The ambassador rose to speak. Perhaps we should listen to what they want. Perhaps we were wrong. Wrong, shouted. They are savages. They broke the blockade. They destroyed ships. They have proven exactly what we said about them. They defended themselves, the ambassador replied quietly. They were ancient, rarely speaking in assembly sessions. When they did, everyone listened. Just as we once defended ourselves, just as every species has the right to do when faced with lies and aggression. The vote to send a combined fleet failed. Only 83 species supported it. The rest abstained or voted no. They were alone. On the flagship Earth's Memory, Ambassador Park watched the reports from Station Prime with satisfaction. The galaxy was finally waking up, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. We cannot simply arrive with weapons pointed at them, she told Admiral during their daily briefing. We need to win more than a battle. We need to win minds. Nodded. What do you suggest? We tell our story, not just the evidence of crimes. Our story, who we are, why we fight. We make them see us as people, not as threats. Lee had been working on this for weeks. She had gathered stories from across human space. Stories of families separated by the blockade. Stories of children born during the isolation. Stories of sacrifice and courage and hope. A young communications officer with a gift for words helped Doctor turn these stories into broadcasts. Every day they sent new messages into the galaxy. Not threats, not demands, just truth. "My name is Han," one message began. A woman appeared on screen holding a baby. "This is my daughter. She was born 3 weeks after the blockade started. Her father is a pilot on one of the ships you are calling invaders. He has never held his daughter. He fights so she can grow up in a galaxy where truth matters more than power." Another message showed an old man standing in a garden on Earth. "My name is Park. I am 91 years old. I remember when humans first reached the stars. We were so excited. We thought we were joining a family. We thought the galaxy would welcome us. We were wrong, but we still believe that family is possible. We still believe in something better." The messages spread. Species who had voted against humanity began to reconsider. Even some citizens started to question what their leaders had done. As the human fleet approached Station Prime, something unexpected happened. A shuttle launched from the station. It carried High Speaker, trying to escape before the humans arrived. Captain Bay's ship detected the shuttle first. His orders were clear. Do not allow any leaders to escape. But how he stopped them was up to him. "We could disable their engines," his weapons officer suggested. "One shot would do it." Thought about it, it would be easy. It would be satisfying. But it would also prove everything the had said about humans. That they were violent. That they were dangerous. That they could not be trusted. "No weapons," ordered. "Match their course. Stay with them." The Indomitable moved alongside the shuttle. For hours they flew together through space, opened a communication channel. "High Speaker, this is Captain Bay of the human vessel Indomitable. We are not going to shoot you. We are not going to board you. But we are not going to let you run either. The whole galaxy is watching. If you keep running, they will know you are guilty. If you turn back and face justice, maybe some of your honor can be saved." There was a long silence. Then slowly the shuttle turned around. It headed back to Station Prime. Leaned back in his chair. His grandmother would be proud. The human fleet arrived at Station Prime and stopped. They did not attack. They did not threaten. 187 ships formed a perfect sphere around the station and waited. Admiral sent a final message to the assembly. His voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of everything humanity had endured. We have come home, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as equals. You will hear us. You will see the truth. And then you will decide what kind of galaxy you want to live in. We are ready when you are. Inside the assembly hall, 400 species looked at each other. They had created this crisis through silence and fear. Now they would have to face it together. The doors of the assembly opened, and humanity walked back in. The Galactic Assembly Hall had never been so full. Every species was present. Every seat was taken. Beings who had not left their home worlds in centuries had traveled to Station Prime. This moment would be recorded in history books for the next 10,000 years. Everyone knew it. Everyone wanted to witness it. Human Marines stood at the entrance. Their weapons were holstered. Their faces were calm. They were not there as invaders. They were there as witnesses. Whatever happened in this hall would happen fairly, and they would make sure of it. Ambassador Park walked into the hall alone. She did not bring advisors. She did not bring guards. She wore a simple black suit, the same one she had worn the day she walked out of this place 3 months ago. The hall fell silent. 400 species watched as this single human woman walked to the empty seats of the human delegation. She did not sit. She stood, and she looked at the assembly with eyes that showed no fear. 60 years ago, began her voice clear and steady, humanity entered this hall with hope. We had just discovered that we were not alone in the universe. We had just learned that there were thousands of intelligent species among the stars. We were excited. We were humble. We wanted to learn. We wanted to belong. She paused, letting her words sink in. We believed in the promise of this assembly. We believed that disputes could be solved through reason instead of war. We believed that law would protect the innocent. We believed that the strong would not prey upon the weak simply because they could. Her voice grew harder. You taught us otherwise. I turned to look directly at the delegation. High Speaker sat frozen in his seat, his face empty of expression. Not through your words, continued, but through your silence when lies were spoken, through your votes cast in fear instead of truth, through your willingness to sacrifice a young species to satisfy an old one. You taught us that this assembly had forgotten its purpose. She pulled out a data device and activated it. Holographic evidence filled the center of the hall. Documents, communications, star maps, the complete record of crimes not just against humanity, but against 12 species over 4,000 years. This is the truth, said. They did not fear our weapons. They feared our resources. They wanted our worlds. So they invented a crime and convinced you all to help them take everything from us. The ambassador rose. They were tall and thin, with skin like old paper and eyes like deep wells. They spoke rarely, but when they spoke, the galaxy listened. We confirm this evidence, they said. 600 years ago they did the same to us. We were too weak to fight back. We lost 3 home worlds. We lost billions of our people. We have carried this shame in silence for too long. They turned to face. We are sorry we did not speak sooner. The ambassador rose next. We too have evidence. They threatened us before the vote. They said they would destroy our trade routes if we did not support the motion against humanity. We were afraid. We are ashamed. One by one, other species rose. Some admitted fear. Some admitted ignorance. Some simply acknowledged that they had been wrong. It was not enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. Finally, turned back to the full assembly. We did not come here to destroy this institution. We came here to save it. An assembly that allows powerful species to prey on weak ones is no assembly at all. It is just a pretty room where criminals wear nice clothes. She let that sink in for a moment. I call for a vote. The hegemony has committed crimes against 12 species over 4,000 years. They have violated every principle this assembly claims to stand for. They must be expelled. The vote was called. The results came quickly. 312 species voted yes. 88 voted no. 10 abstained. The delegation was escorted out by their own guards. High Speaker said nothing as he left. His 4 arms hung at his sides. His head was bowed. He had played a game that his people had won for thousands of years. This time he had lost. As the doors closed behind made her final statement. Humanity will resume its seat in this assembly. We will work with all species who want peace. We will trade. We will share knowledge. We will be good neighbors. Her voice hardened one last time. But let this day serve as a reminder to everyone present. We are not a people who wait for rescue. We are not a people who accept injustice quietly. When we are pushed, we push back. When we are attacked, we fight. And when we are wronged, we march until justice is done. She sat down in her seat, the seat that had been empty for 3 months, the seat that humanity had earned twice now. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then slowly the ambassador began to applaud. The joined, then others. Soon the entire assembly was filled with the sound of 400 species showing their respect. 1 year later, the galaxy looked very different. The assembly had passed new laws requiring transparent investigations before any species could be punished. They called them the Accords. Ambassador Shin's young successor worked to rebuild trust between humanity and the other species. Admiral retired to a quiet home on Earth. He spent his days teaching young officers about the importance of patience and persistence. Captain Bay was promoted to Commodore. His grandmother finally returned to retirement, though she still visited the shipyard sometimes just to watch the workers. Doctor wrote a book about the crisis. It became required reading at diplomatic academies across 12 species. Continued working in communications, telling stories that brought species together instead of driving them apart. In a small memorial garden on Station Prime, a plaque was installed. It bore a human proverb translated into 400 languages. Those who stand for nothing fall for anything. The galaxy had watched in dread as humanity marched out of the assembly. They had expected destruction. They had expected revenge. Instead, they got something they had not seen in a very long time. They got hope.